Hey, come here. You like pro wrestling? We got a little something for you. Two fans, 3,000 miles away. We each been watching for more than 30 years. Celebrate the art form, the action, the homoeroticism. We ain't rating matches. We ain't analyzing stories. We ain't experts. We just sit down, shut up, and mark out! Hey, everybody! It is Blade Daily coming at you with Joshi G for another episode of Sit Down, Shut Up, Mark Out, a pro wrestling podcast about pro wrestling. It's not just a clever name. That's actually what it's about. So, welcome, Joshi G. Hello.
How's it going, man?
I say, how are you every time, so I thought I'd just try something else.
Yeah, okay, let's try something else. What have you been up to? Hi, guys. Let's talk about what we've been up to lately. How about that? You start.
Okay. I'm watching an anime right now.
Nice. Me too.
It's called Pluto on Netflix. And essentially, it's an anime about robots that are the most powerful robots in the world, being sought out and one by one murdered by some kind of force that has yet to be revealed. And in the show, it's getting harder and harder to distinguish between robots and humans. Some of the humans hate robots completely based on misinformation propagated by one person who personally had a bad experience with robots, which is nothing like the current political situation in America or past world wars that resulted in the deaths of millions. So what are you watching?
Okay, so right now I'm watching Sailor Moon Crystal.
Nice.
So if I wasn't enough of a nerd before, I'm an even bigger nerd now. So basically what happened was that on Saturday I went to Comic-Con with my husband, and we met Rob Van Dam.
What?
He was there, yeah. So we took a selfie with him.
We've talked like so many times and you didn't even mention that you met RVD.
I thought you saw it on my Instagram story. I'll send you the photo.
What?
Sorry. What? You know what? I wasn't sleeping well for a few days and I guess I completely forgot, but he was so freaking cool. Very friendly, very talkative. Such a great guy. So we really enjoyed meeting him. And then we went to a Kevin Smith panel.
Oh, cool. Which
was really neat. So a lot of people asked him questions, and I think he only got through like 5 questions because his answers were so long. He talks so much. Oh my goodness.
As a guy who likes to hear his own voice, for sure.
Yeah, but he is so fun. So freaking funny. So really great day. And since we were there walking around, I found a Sailor Moon hoodie. And I got super excited and I decided to buy it. And then I was like, you know what? I've always loved Sailor Moon. I watched the anime when I was a kid, and they had remade it several years ago. So they made Silver Moon Crystal, and it's on Netflix, and I decided to watch it. And I've actually really been enjoying it. You know, like, the original is always going to be very special to me, but they've done a really good job with the remake. And besides that, been watching wrestling. I was getting into a lot of Korean shows on Netflix. Like, just to name a few, I watched The Glory, Celebrity, and Mask Girl. So They were all a lot of fun. The Mask Girl was my favorite. So if you want to watch a show about how basically people try to find a different identity online to escape from reality, it's very interesting, and just getting into how that can become quite dangerous as well. Really, really interesting and realistic too. Like, you never know. Sometimes we try to hide escape our true identities and create one online, and we think, okay, this is going really great. And unfortunately, there are some people online that can be pretty scary, and it can turn into a very frightening situation rather quickly. So that's what I've been up to.
Wow. Well, that sounds nothing like us using our birth names and my profile picture on Threads. I look just like Swerve Strickland. I'm very often bleeding, just like my profile picture. I'm definitely not crafting a persona for the online.
Of course not. Every week on our podcast, you're always bleeding.
I'm always bleeding.
You're always bleeding. Terrible. And I apologize for not telling you about RVD sooner. I don't know why it didn't even occur to me. I just figured you saw my Instagram story.
God.
I know. I'll send you the photo after.
Met RVD without even telling me. But we want to thank you guys for your feedback and your support, especially about our last episode. Joshi G had brought up a really good point about the Toni Storm, Mariah May love triangle. She was cool with, kind of what had happened to that point. She didn't want it to kind of continue in that direction because, unfortunately, so many dudes who are wrestling fans are kind of douchebags. And we don't want that to become the expectation of these women going forward. And we got quite a number of responses from people, predominantly female listeners. Yes, other wrestling podcasts. We actually have female listeners that say they're worried about the same thing. And unfortunately, American wrestling has such a terrible history of marginalizing female performers, abusing female performers, and fans treating them like meat simply to be objectified, ogled, and harassed. And of course, we do not want to see that happen. Joshi, thank you for bringing that to the forefront.
My pleasure.
But at the time we taped that episode, it seemed like something to be concerned about. But
not anymore.
This week, I think we found out that we're going to maybe tone it down in that way, but tone it up in another way. And that is because the tone shifted pretty drastically this Wednesday. Very quickly on AEW Dynamite. Because in what was no secret whatsoever, Mariah May triumphed over Willow Nightingale. Clean, relatively-ish. Willow was attacked by Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway in the match. So we got to at least account for that. But Mariah, in the most babyface-ish way you possibly could, beats Willow with a victory roll, the exact same finish as Brett and Owen Hart at WrestleMania 10. And Toni gets in the ring. And kind of up until this time, I was like, is Toni going to expect Mariah to take a fall for her? Is that how they're going to do it? And Toni looks overjoyed, like she's so happy her protege has won this tournament. And now they get to wrestle each other at Wembley. Toni looked like very excited about it. And Toni points at the belt up at the top of the ramp. And Mariah looks at the belt and she looks at Toni like, let's go get it. And then they run up and Toni very smartly turns around and waves to the crowd to give Mariah a little extra time to go grab that belt. Then Mariah beats the living fuck out of her with it and bloodies her and proceeds to turn this into an absolute horror show.
Yeah. And she beat up Luther too.
And Luther got his ass kicked.
He went through a table.
Joshi.
Sorry. It's not that it's funny. It's just, it is kind of funny just because it's Luther,
She laid in some stiff fucking shots during that whole thing. Mariah May is terrifying. Okay?
Yes.
Even before this is a woman who wrestles stiff. Okay? Like, I assume the people who are listening to this probably saw what we saw, okay? So I don't know that I can describe this in complete detail. But Mariah nails Toni with the belt in the face. Toni goes down. Blade job.
Yeah.
Gets smacked in the back with the belt numerous times. Toni comes up bleeding, crying.
Who are you?
The betrayal in Toni's expression is so visceral. I mean, it's so real. But then, for somebody who says to watch for the shoe.
Oh, man.
Mariah takes Toni's heels and beats her in the head with them over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
Before doing what she did to Luther. Am I getting the timing of this right, or did she knock Luther off the ramp first?
She knocked Luther off the ramp first.
Before,
and
then she went back
shoe.
and grabbed the shoe. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she beat the living crap out of it, out of Toni with it. Sorry. And then the refs came out. Yeah. Then the refs came out and she pushes poor Aubrey.
Pushed Aubrey to the ground.
How can you do something like that?
And kind of showed us all what a fucking badass monster we've been messing with this whole time without ever knowing it.
Yeah. And then she, like you said, she kisses Toni and she gets her blood all over her face. And
Mariah has blood all over her face. Toni's blood all over her face. Yeah. I saw the backstage shit that they showed on Instagram and YouTube and stuff the next day.
Yeah.
Mariah just walks backstage with blood on her, and she's got this big smile, like this big supermodel smile. And they go, "Do you have anything to say about your actions?" And she just walks past them. Then they show Toni, who looks like she's been literally the victim in a horror movie. She's got blood all over her. And she's just selling like crazy. This was so fucking perfect.
Oh,
They do not do heel turns like this to this level of perfection ever. I thought MJF's heel turn the week before was very good. Very good. It was extremely well done. But this put it to shame. Like, it's not even in the same universe. I'm trying to think, is there a heel turn better than this one? Ever.
Recently?
Ever.
Oh, ever. Look, I'm always going to love Hogan's heel turn just because it was so freaking well done. That's always going to stand out to me. But this is up there. And also,
Hogan's a great comparison point where it's like so shocking, right?
Yeah, it was just like, whoa, the biggest baby face here has just turned heel. How the hell did this happen?
And it was a shock with no buildup whatsoever.
Even though Heenan had to freaking say, whose side is he on? But I mean, when you were watching it, you didn't really think about what he was saying. You're just like, Heenan, what the hell are you talking about? Obviously, he's going to beat up the freaking the outsiders. So it was really shocking nonetheless. But in this case, I think for me anyway, look, yeah, a lot of us saw it coming. We knew that Mariah was using Toni and she was going to turn on her eventually. I just didn't expect it to be this freaking brutal. That's what caught me off guard. To me, it was just, wow, this is extremely violent. And in terms of women's stories, this is my favorite story ever. It really is. And if I look at stories in general and not even think about gender, it's up there for me, like really, really high up there for me. Like right now, I can't choose one because it's so hard. There are quite a few that I love, but it is the best in terms of the women's division, any women's division. I do think it's the best story I've ever seen. They used All About Eve as inspiration and they executed it perfectly. They added layers to it by including Mina. And I just think that Mariah did such a terrific job appearing as an ally.
Well, and appearing so meek and like deferential to Toni. Yeah. That when she went full like fucking Judas, on Toni and had no remorse whatsoever and went so violent in retaliation against Toni, it was shocking.
It was.
And I think the reason that this heel turn feels different than, say, the Hogan heel turn, and why I like it I'm talking from an art perspective, okay? We're not talking about dollars and attendance and buy rates and fuck all that bullshit. I don't care. Hogan had it easy in a lot of ways because all he had to do was show up and turn heel, right?
Yes.
But there was no foreshadowing. We all knew that someday Mariah was going to turn on Toni Storm. They foreshadowed it. They showed you all along that Luther never trusted Mariah.
Right.
They showed you all along that Toni was so weakened by her own ego that, she was looking past all the warning signs that Mariah was a threat to her. And over 6 months of time, they lulled us into this false sense that Mariah and Toni was this great love story, kind of, in a way. And these two, Mariah came in with the clear purpose of getting her to this point, and Toni Storm was the one who was going to get her there. And between the two of them. And these two have done a masterclass in telling a story. Now, it's not fair to compare, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. The two things in AEW history that I hear always called the greatest story are Kenny Omega and Hangman.
Yes.
And CM Punk and MJF.
The second one I don't agree with. Sorry.
I don't agree with either. And you know why? Because CM Punk never finished the story with MJF. It's an incomplete story. It's an incomplete story. I mean, did they have good heat together? Yeah, of course. But they never finished it. The Hangman and Kenny story was great and told over a long period of time, but with a lot of hiccups and interruptions.
True.
It's my favorite story ever. Okay. Like,
so good. Yeah. One of mine. That's one of the ones I was thinking of. That's really up there.
But Toni and Mariah is right next to it. In my opinion, we got to see how this closes out. But this is one of the most expertly told stories I've ever seen in professional wrestling, regardless of promotion, regardless of gender. I'm talking on a purely creative level. This is one of the greatest stories ever told in professional wrestling. And these two women, and Luther and Mina, have absolutely crushed it on every level. The execution of this heel turn could not have been done any better. It made it very real. It went from this kind of batshit retro movie cinema thing to being extremely real, like you were watching a crime scene by the end of Dynamite this week. I cannot commend these women enough.
I completely agree with you. I mean, you look at when Mariah came in last year, she really wanted to work with Toni Storm. Toni was her idol. And you had Toni that didn't even remember what her name was. She was very indifferent towards Mariah. So eventually they developed this really close relationship, and Toni starts to show signs of jealousy, love for Mariah. And what I think AEW did so well was you had to catch those glimpses where Mariah was acting a little bit suspicious, like she wanted to throw in the towel at Double or Nothing. She would stare at the belt and kind of made a pouty face. Like, these were little signs, but they weren't done regularly enough for someone to say, oh yeah, this is definitely going to happen. Like, some fans were actually shocked that she turned on Toni. I saw it coming because I watched All About Eve. I knew that was the source of inspiration for the storyline. Nonetheless, the fact that people were surprised is really telling. It just shows that maybe those little details were too minor for someone to, really catch on to. So the fact that Toni became so enamored by, with Mariah, and that she trusted her completely, and then Mariah just turns on her like that, and not only just turns on her, but destroys her and hurts her and has no remorse, like you said, whatsoever, is just amazing storytelling. Mariah never cared about. Never. Let's be honest. For you to basically say, okay, I'm going to turn on this person right away. I tricked them into loving me, into trusting. And that's it for me. It worked. And I don't really care. Like, this person means nothing to me. Holy crap.
A total sociopath.
She is a total sociopath. And I don't know if you saw on Twitter. Well, I use Instagram more, but Mina is completely shocked by her actions.
I hadn't seen any of that.
Oh, no, Mariah. So this caught everyone off guard in terms of Mariah's circle of friends and whatnot. Just, as you said, masterclass storytelling makes you feel really bad for Toni, because Toni walked into this friendship, relationship, whatever you want to call it, with a lot of hesitation. And as soon as she started to show so much love for Mariah, this is what Mariah does. You know?
So, there's obviously like this kind of thread that, Mariah's a villain and that she planned this the whole time. But Toni was an asshole to her for a lot of this story.
At first.
She treated her like shit. You know, she couldn't remember her name. Then she refused to even watch her matches, and as we've seen Toni soften and fallen more in love with Toni.
With Mariah.
Knowing that Mariah's using her, right? They were still so adorable together that you couldn't help but love it. And even though you knew what was coming, you couldn't help but be shocked and saddened and horrified by what they showed you. And that is genuine, brilliant, creative writing. That is awesome storytelling.
Absolutely.
And I can't commend these women enough.
Same here. And did you notice that once Mariah turned heel, Nigel didn't say anything?
He didn't say shit.
No.
He didn't say a goddamn thing.
I find a way to justify it since he's so in love with her.
I have no idea. But I got to say, Toni Storm, I've never seen somebody go farther to put somebody over. It's very similar to Kenny Omega with Hangman Page. Where it's like they tell a in their case, a multi-year story, but like there's the same level of story packed into this. It's just over a shorter period of time. And there, in fairness, there isn't a pandemic, interfering with this constantly. But I got to say, Toni Storm is my pick for Wrestler of the Year this year. I think that when I say that, I'm talking about all the aspects of wrestling. Her matches have been great. Her character work is second to none. There's nobody better than her right now. I love Swerve Strickland. He is possibly my favorite wrestler currently. And I would give it to Toni. Hands down. Like,
agreed.
She has done some of the most inspired work I have seen. That was the focus for me for this episode, was to really give this its due. And the revolutionary work that Mariah May, Toni Storm, Luther, and Mina have done, and AEW has done with this story, RJ City has done with this story. Incredible stuff. Stuff.
A big applause for everyone involved.
Huge.
And I think there's still a lot to be told. And my guess is Mariah wins at All In, and we get a returning Jamie Hayter, and and then things will continue, and there'll be other stories. And right now, I play daily. I've said this before. The women are the best part of the shows.
It's incredible what's happening with AEW's women's division right now. It's as good as it could possibly be right now, and it's only getting better. It's only getting better. Switching gears, Bryan Danielson pulls off the fucking miracle win over Hangman Page.
Shocking.
to win the Owen Hart Cup tournament. fantastic match that these guys had on Dynamite. These guys, it's one of the most underrated. I would call it just a rivalry, not really a feud. Every match these guys have had has been fantastic. When it was the highlight of Hangman's title reign, honestly, the 2 matches he had with Bryan Danielson a couple years back. And then the match they had where Danielson finally got his win over Hangman in the world title tournament that happened in the wake of Brawl Out a few years back. Fantastic stuff. These guys put on a great match. Jeff Jarrett gets a little bit of comeuppance against Hangman Page, but he doesn't really cheat to give Danielson the win either, which I thought was a very cool thing. Jarrett didn't blatantly screw Hangman, and I thought that was really cool. I thought that was a really cool way to do it. We get Swerve and Danielson at All In, which was my dream scenario. I kind of felt like when Hangman came back, like, oh shit, Hangman's going to have to win this thing. But are they really going to want Swerve to lose to Hangman at All In? Because I didn't see another way they could have Swerve beat Hangman again. This was the smarter play in my opinion. And I think either Hangman's going to fuck Swerve over in the main event to give Danielson the win, or Danielson's going to pull off the miracle victory and they will have a rematch at Wrestle Dream in Tacoma. But one way or the other, this was an amazing setup. We're now setting up for, we have MJF versus Ospreay. I feel like that has to be the match they're building to at All In. But also next week on Dynamite.
Well, just real quick, that's what I'm a little bit confused about, right? Because on Dynamite, Pac won the 4-way match. And he's British and he wants to be part of All In. So is he going to, challenge the winner next week to a match at All In? Or, because I also thought it was going to be Ospreay MJF at All In for sure. Now they announced it next week. Mm-hmm. And it's like, fine. So my initial thought was, okay, it could still happen at All In. But now that you've added Pac to the situation, I'm not so sure anymore.
I think something crazy is going to be happening with this title until All In. I think they got to be building to MJF versus Ospreay.
I would imagine so.
I just don't know if the title will be a factor at All In.
Okay.
That's
so
what I'm
they
saying.
Would wrestle without the belt. Okay.
Or let's say MJF fucks over Ospreay and wins on Dynamite this week. And then Ospreay screws MJF and he drops the title before All In. The title might get hot potatoed before Pac wins it from whoever has it at All In. But I still think it'll be MJF and Ospreay. If I were to predict, that's where I'm going with it.
It might not be for the belt. That's all.
It just might not be for the belt. It's just more of a blood feud kind of thing.
Okay.
Neither of those guys needs a belt anyway. I mean, if we're being honest,
True.
But Pac having the international title wouldn't bother me one bit. Wouldn't bother me.
Not at all.
At all.
I'm a huge fan of Pac. It's just
me too.
When he said, now I get a shot at the international belt and I want to be at All In and whatnot. I said, well, wait a second. In that case, he would have to face whoever wins next week, which would be Ospreay or MJF.
Right.
So that kind of caught me off guard. But like you said, MJF Ospreay doesn't need to be for the belt at All In. So I guess we'll see. It definitely keeps things interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think Tony Khan has heard the complaints like, things feel too predictable and now they don't. Now they really don't. There was a really great post from Chrissy Chemistry, who is a friend of mine and I'm sure of yours too, on Threads.
Yeah,
she cool. said, one of her favorite things about wrestling is analyzing the stories and trying to predict where things are going to go. I totally agree. How else could you watch this much wrestling for this long if you didn't love doing that, right? Mm-hmm. And I love trying to figure out where they're going. And right now, what I love about AEW is there's certain storylines like Mariah and Toni. You knew where it was going the whole time. And then you have this stuff with Ospreay and Will, and it could go anywhere. It could go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like, who knows? Maybe Daniel Garcia comes out next week and fucks over MJF and keeps the belt on Will.
You never know. There are so many possibilities. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And real quick, I'm with you when it comes to Danielson. I'm so happy that he won because he has been so selfless in AEW.
Yes.
So selfless. And I just would like to see him win a belt. Even if he does win it All In and he has a very short reign as champion, who cares? You know, it's just to give him something. And I know how Danielson is. He doesn't want a belt and he's that kind of wrestler. But it would be really nice as a fan of his to see him rewarded like Sting was, you know? I just really think it was the right call. And as we were saying last week, this is a great opportunity now for Hangman to be part of Blood and Guts, right? I had said that as soon as Swerve announces that he's going to be part of Team AEW, Hangman will approach the Elite and say, okay, I'll be on your team. And that's exactly what happened. So that story is going to continue anyways.
Yes, you predicted that. And that was not something I foresaw. I thought it was going to be Hangman has to be Danielson so that he can be Swerve's opponent. And you called, him joining because Swerve joins Team AEW. Hats off to you, Brendo. You called
just took his hat off. He literally took it off. Yeah.
I'm doing visual cues on a audio only podcast. Real quick, MJF, he cut a great promo on Collision outlining exactly what his beef is. It's not even with Will Ospreay. It's with us.
Yes.
MJF hates our ass. He told us if we ever turned our back on him, it would crush him, and he felt we did. You know, the people who said, thank you, Joe, the night after World's End, you know, they saw us fall in love with Will Ospreay, and MJF says, no, the only way to right this ship, EAW's going down the toilet, and the only way to right the ship is for him to be on top.
Great stuff.
It was a good segment. I really, really liked it. I thought
it was.
Max did a great job of laying out why he's doing what he's doing. Daniel Garcia is just some punk collateral damage. Will Ospreay is really just some punk collateral damage. Honestly, it kind of sounded like MJF's almost looking like to Swerve. Like he wants to get to Swerve. MJF versus Swerve for the title. Give it to me. I'm all about it.
That would be an awesome match. Yeah.
You better be putting over Swerve, though, motherfucker. That's all I got to say.
Absolutely.
That's all I got to say. So, fantastic stuff. A lot of good stuff on Dynamite this week. But I told you all last week that we were going to do some non-AEW discourse on this week's show because we haven't done much lately because so much has been going on in AEW. But I came up with a few questions, and listeners, we want to know your opinion as well. So please tag us on Threads, tag us on Instagram if you want to, with a picture maybe of this match. I want to know, what's a dream match of current performers that you want to see? A dream match of current performers that you want to see, whether it feels possible right now or not. I didn't shoot crazy over the moon, but this is genuinely the match I would most want to see. And that is, I want to see Kenny Omega take on Shingo Takagi in a best 2 out of 3 falls match.
Nice.
Hour-long, epic. Kenny Omega, Shingo Takagi, probably in New Japan, where there's like, time isn't an issue. There's no commercial breaks. Just go absolutely ape shit. These are 2 of the best performers in the world. Takagi is my favorite guy in New Japan, period. Has been since I really became aware of him. I've seen him versus Ospreay. I've seen Ospreay versus Kenny. I've seen Shingo versus a lot of people that I had never seen him against. Maybe one of the only people I hadn't seen him against was Danielson. And now I've seen that. So I can only imagine what these 2 would do without any handcuffs. But yes, if I could have one dream match in the world, it would be Shingo, Takagi, Kenny Omega, best 2 out of 3 falls match in Japan. 1 hour long. God damn it. Go for it. Joshi, what would you do?
So I also want Shingo Kenny, but I'm going to go with another match since you already went with that one. So for me, and it looks like we might get it relatively soon, it would be Pac Ospreay.
Damn.
That's the match I've been wanting to see for a very long time. I want at least 30 minutes.
Yeah.
An hour would be ideal.
Yeah.
These are two of the best wrestlers in the world. They're both British, so that would be really cool. It would kind of be one of those things where you would wonder who's the better British wrestler. Their styles are pretty similar. I would just love to see that match. I know you had said just one, so that's my top one, but there are a few others that I'm just going to throw out there.
Of course.
Serena Deeb Shiri from Stardom.
Oh, nice.
Two technical wrestlers. I absolutely want to see that match eventually. Tony Khan, book it and book it fast. Serena Deeb, Deonna Purrazzo.
Oh, hell yeah.
That match better happen.
It's going. It has to happen.
Freaking better. Okay.
It has to
these
happen.
two women would absolutely kill it. Give them as much time as possible. They are masters when it comes to technical wrestling.
Absolutely.
One match that I really, really want to see because they're both built like beast. Mm-hmm. They both remind me of pit bulls. Pac Ishii. I want this match and I want it as soon as possible.
That would be badass.
Right?
That would be, that's some really outside the box, like fucking,
yes.
But these guys are both beasts.
That's why it would be so beautiful.
And Ishii is going to be in AEW for the entire summer. Did you see that?
Exactly. I did see that. Tony, Pac Ishii, come on. Let's not wait around here. This match has to happen.
That's a great match.
And I have one more. Sorry, I'm going on and on. One more and I'll stop. I have too many.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Give me Takeshita Okada.
Fuck yeah.
Please.
Fuck yeah.
I want this match. And there's no reason why this match cannot happen. They both work in AEW.
Another match that I saw being floated around as a possible all-in match was Hangman versus Okada.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Which, that would be fucking killer.
I would love that.
And
just
speaking of crazy-ass dream matches that we're getting next week on Dynamite, Swerve Okada.
Oh my goodness. How is that even going to end? Maybe it will end in a draw. I don't know.
I don't know because they're doing MJF and Ospreay and Swerve and Okada on the same show. They can't do two schmaz finishes.
No, they can't.
So it's going to have to be something crazy.
Man, we're so spoiled.
This is insane. That's one episode of Dynamite.
Yes.
One episode.
I don't know what to expect though.
That's two pay-per-view matches on one episode of Dynamite.
You have to protect Swerve and Okada though, right?
You would think you got to protect both of those guys, but you would also think you'd want to protect MJF and Ospreay. So like,
right. Oh, I don't know.
They're going to have to leave one of these guys unprotected. Somebody's taking a fall between those two matches. So it's going to be very interesting to see where that goes. It's going to be very interesting. I almost wonder if Hangman tries to get involved in that Swerve Okada match and manages to piss off Okada somehow because they teased tension between those two guys. I loved that face-off. A very brief face-off they had on Dynamite was very cool.
It was.
Oh, there's so much good stuff happening right now.
And it's not all predictable, people.
It's not. It's not predictable really at all. It could go a million different directions right now. And that's what's so awesome about it. I am so stoked for next Dynamite, episode 250. Unbelievable. One match I thought of that I don't know how likely it is to happen, but I thought about this while you were talking is Mayu Iwatani versus Thunder Rosa.
Would be
really cool match.
Yeah,
I think that could be really amazing. They have very different styles, but compatible styles.
True.
And I think they would beat the shit out of each other. One thing about Thunder Rosa is she wrestles stiff.
She does. One of the reasons why I love her. Yeah,
and so does Mayu.
Extremely stiff.
They would Yeah, they'd have to have a stern talking to before that match. Like, do not really kill each other. Like,
no, please.
For liability issues alone. But Mayu Iwatani versus Thunder Rosa, that would be a really cool match. And a match we could conceivably see.
Yeah.
But
100%.
Real quick, this Ishii in AEW for the summer thing.
Oh, I'm so happy.
This is the kind of thing you can do with these working relationships. Jericho's going to be wrestling Mystico in CMLL pretty soon. That is really exciting as well. So I think you're just starting to see these forbidden door relationships start to really become what I've always hoped they could be.
Me too. They've really blossomed.
Yeah, you could, you had Gates of Agony in World Tag League this year. I think you might see the Lucha Bros in World Tag League this year.
Oh, I really want that to happen. Please, 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 please make that happen. That would be so freaking cool.
Another Ishii match that I'd really love to see, a singles match. Penta and Ishii. Singles.
Oh.
One-on-one. These two would kill it together.
Oh, yeah.
So, listeners, what is your dream match of current competitors that you want to see? Either comment on this episode, share on Threads or Instagram, or just tag us. We'll read them on our next episode. Or if you want to send them in private, you can. And if you want to be anonymous, just tell us so. Email us at sitdownshutupmarkout@gmail.com. Okay, so we're moving on from that. What is the most underrated wrestler? Who is the most underrated wrestler of your lifetime and mine? I'll go first again because I ain't scared of shit. I'm going to go with Raven. And
good one.
I'm going to say why. It would have been Christian Cage until about a year ago. But Christian is finally getting his flowers in the most massive way possible. And he absolutely deserves them. I have been a huge fan of his. Honestly, was always a much bigger Christian fan than I was of Copeland. I have loved Copeland in AEW. Was never as big a fan of Edge, but I am a big fan of Adam Copeland. I have loved his AEW run. Guy has shown me a ton. But man, Christian Cage, what a great wrestler. But getting to my pick, Raven. There are other people I could have picked as well. But what I love about Raven is that his biggest asset as a wrestler is his psychology. He was always fucking with people and then kind of beating them because he fucked with them so much. And so his biggest strength was really as a promo and as just somebody who got into the heads of his opponents before they ever wrestled. You never really got to see that in WCW, which was probably his biggest exposure to a lot of people, was his work in WCW. Watch Raven in ECW. Occasionally you saw it in TNA, but I think his time had kind of come and gone. But for that couple year run he had in ECW with Sandman, with Tommy Dreamer, and several others, Raven was absolutely the shit. He's a legend, in my opinion. And he's not highly regarded enough. He was an underrated worker. He was a very solid worker as well. Had some very, very crazy hardcore matches. The guy could go. Unfortunately, he was pretty fucked up on drugs and alcohol and other things during that time as well. But man, Raven, for the time that he was kind of a supernova. He burned real bright for a short period of time. But I would say Raven is one of the most underrated wrestlers ever.
I like that you mentioned Raven. I really like him. Always have. And he was always really cool and deserved more.
He did.
And I would have mentioned Christian Cage too, but he has been recognized in AEW, so I'm not going to use him as my most underrated wrestler. I think for Vader. I think that in Japan, they did a really great job with him. In New Japan, he was the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. In All Japan, he won the Triple Crown. But in the US, especially in WWE, I didn't feel they did as much as they could have. I mean, it is cool that he won the WCW Heavyweight title, well, in WCW, obviously, but in WWE, I don't know. I just don't feel treated as well as you should have been. And the guy was just such a badass. He wrestled so well. And you could see how talented he was in All Japan, especially. Just such a hard hitter. And he works so well with the Japanese wrestlers there. And he was such a badass guy. I mean, to lose your eye in a match and just put it right back into your socket and continue wrestling. Wow.
I watched that match one time just to say I saw it, but I can't watch it again.
It's hard to watch. He had wrestled Stan Hansen.
Yeah.
And got his eye taken out of his socket.
Were trying to murder each other, and you can't convince me otherwise. It is fucking brutal match. Yeah. Holy shit. And Vader, it was hitting Stan Hansen hard as hell.
He was. To put your eyeball back in your socket and continue wrestling, most people would have said, okay, stop the match.
Yeah.
I lost my eyeball, but Vader said, nope, I'm going to continue. And he just always put wrestling first. He would finish his matches. He hit really freaking hard. And I just don't feel he's as appreciated in the United States. And I don't know why. I am really glad that Japan gave him the recognition that they did, because he was truly deserving. So for me, it's him.
So you pick Vader. I think that's a great pick. And I was thinking while you were talking, Vader, I don't know that he was underrated in his own time, except when he was in WWE. He was massively pushed in WCW. He was the big bad boss, right? Until Hogan showed up.
Yes. Until Hogan showed up.
But in the through the eyes of history, Vader is very underrated for what he contributed. Yeah. It's not so much that he was underrated in his own time, but as time has gone on, he's kind of under-respected. He's not respected enough. And
he isn't.
He was the IWGP Tag Team Champion, and his tag partner was Bam Bam Bigelow.
Yeah. That's
Vader
insane.
and Bam Bam Bigelow were a tag team. Bam Bam would be on my list of criminally underrated talents as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
I was so happy he got a very brief run as the ECW World Champion, because that guy should have been a world champion. He's one of the greatest big men of all time. But I would go so far as to say, in my personal opinion, for that super heavyweight class of guys, that would include at one time the Big Boss Man, who was amazing. One Man Gang, who wasn't as amazing, but I enjoyed. Bigelow. I would say Vader was the greatest of them all.
He was. He stood out a lot.
People will put Yokozuna as one of the greatest. And I got to say, Yoko had maybe 1 or 2 years where he was really great. But then he got so big, he wasn't that great anymore. Yeah. And I loved Yoko. But
me too.
When he was great, he was so great. Very much like what I said about Raven. He was like a supernova. He burned super bright and then he faded out. Vader was great for like a decade and a half. He was great for like 15 years.
Yeah.
And then when he left WWE, he went to All Japan and became the Triple Crown champion, and had another great run, and for like another year or two, where he was over there fucking fighting Kobashi and Misawa.
What a career, man.
What a fucking career. This guy fought Antonio Inoki and beat him, which didn't happen at that time in New Japan. So yes, great pick. Vader, amazing, amazing pick. Criminally underrated through the long arm of history. So we want to know, who do you think? Who is your underrated wrestler? Tag us on Threads, on Instagram. Send us an email. Sit down, shut up, mark out. At gmail.com. We will read your picks in our next episode. Last category. Who is your most overhated wrestler? By either the IWC, like people who got picked on way too much. Honestly, some people got picked on too much by Dave Meltzer or by Wade Keller or whatever, or just people who are just not given the respect they deserved historically. I have two. And I think both of these guys are worthy of different considerations for the Hall of Fame, either the WWE Hall of Fame or other wrestling Hall of Fames. My first pick would be Psycho Sid Vicious. This guy was not a very good wrestler, okay? He wasn't. But this guy was not a very good promo either. But I saw this guy live in his prime, 1996. I saw Sid come out on Raw and get the biggest pop of the whole night. This is when they taped 4 or 5 Raws like in one night, and Raw was only an hour long. And Sid, on the same show that featured Mankind, on the same show that featured The Undertaker, on the same show that featured Shawn Michaels as the world champion, nobody got a louder pop than Sid Vicious. This guy had it. Not wrestling talent, not promo talent. This guy had charisma, physical charisma and presence that you just can't buy. And the fans loved him regardless of his skill level. We loved Sid. And he was very much overhated in his own time. You know, the Meltzers, if the IWC had been a real thing at the time, they would have hated him too. But Sid was never going to win a title for best worker. But man, this guy was awesome. He was fucking awesome. And I had the pleasure of talking with none other on Threads than Lance fucking Storm, who agreed with me about this. How cool is it, by the way, that we have access to fucking Lance goddamn Storm on Threads? Like, Lance will talk with you about, if you have a good question for Lance, he'll fucking answer it. Lance comments on my posts a lot and commented that he thought Sid absolutely had something extremely special as a wrestler that you just couldn't buy. And this is a super worker, a guy who could have gone mano a mano in the ring with anyone. A Bret Hart kind of worker, you know? And Lance agreed. The other guy that I thought was absolutely overhated, who I loved as a wrestler, as a kid, was Lex Luger. This is another guy, and I think part of it is unfortunately his ties to Miss Elizabeth and how she passed away. He was one of the biggest stars of the late 80s and early 90s. And though I wouldn't say he was as good as Sting, though I wouldn't say he was as good as a Ric Flair, somebody like that, Lex was great. Lex was very, very good. And I think his career deserves a reexamination. He has devoted himself to helping people find the right path in life and not making the same mistakes Lex made. And I think that should count for something and go a long way. I would say Lex Luger was a very underrated wrestler of his own time. Joshi, who do you got? I went on for a long time.
Those are good choices. I liked Lex Luger when I was a kid, actually. So I'll go with X-Pac first. I mean, X-Pac heat derives from something, right? But all in seriousness, for me, my pick would actually be Jeff Jarrett. I mean, don't get me wrong. When he was in TNA, it was kind of deserved because he had no business being champion for that long and for being champion multiple times. And even I'm guilty of being a little bit too hard on Jeff. I mean, when he got signed with AEW, I was like, no, not this guy. And
it was baffling to me as well. At the very beginning, it was like I kind of respected the grind, and I respected that he got a contract, and it was Jeff Jarrett at 60 something. It was on TV, but
yeah, and just Tony announcing him for a match on television the following week, I would think to myself, why? Somebody else should be in that match instead. And I have to say, Jeff has done an incredible job in AEW. He's been in some really good matches. As you said, he's in his early 60s, and the fact that he can still wrestle that way is incredible. And there was a reason why WCW and WWE liked him and pushed him. There's a really good reason for that. And so I do apologize to Jeff Jarrett for being so hard on him. I don't take back what I said about this time in TNA because, again,
nor do I.
it wasn't right for him to be champion that regularly and for that long. But
it was like a mini Reign of Terror Triple H style kind of thing.
Yeah. But when you look at his overall career, he did work really hard.
Yes, he did.
He was always very charismatic. He did work, hard in his matches, and it's really crazy to see him wrestle guys like Orange Cassidy and applaud those matches. Who would have thought? Even his match with Hangman Page last week, he looked good, and the fans cheered for him. So he'd be my pick. I think he's gotten too much hate when it's not really deserved, for the most part anyway.
I think a couple things. Jeff Jarrett is always at his best when he, like in his physical prime, when he was an upper mid-card heel. Like, it's just not the type of character that should be your world champion. I never saw him that way. Honestly, I knew WCW was going downhill when he was the world champion. And I hate to say that. I know that's harsh, but it's not a slam on Jeff. It's just his character works best as an upper mid-card heel. It's like a gatekeeper type heel. That said, Jeff Jarrett has done some of the coolest shit ever. But one of the coolest things that Jeff ever did was Jeff holds the record for the worst ring gear I have ever seen when he was Double J, and he had that terrible like stripy top that he had with the glowing, with the like light up hat.
Oh gosh.
And the horrible jackets that he wore to the ring. It is the ugliest, shittiest, worst ring gear of all time. And I commend Jeff Jarrett because no one has ever even come close to that shitty ring gear. Also, Jeff, just last year, AEW, we have talked about how they don't do a lot of away from the ring type stuff.
Yeah.
But the vignette that Jeff did when he, Satnam Singh, Karen Jarrett, and Jay Lethal showed up to Mark Briscoe's farm to try and convince him to join them was like the most hilarious vignette that far away from the ring that I think AEW's ever done. It was amazing. Please go find that on YouTube. Please find that on YouTube. Satnam Singh in overalls with Mark Briscoe's baby son. Amazing shit. Amazing
that was
stuff.
So silly. Yeah.
Well, folks, we are actually keeping this one to about an hour this time. We want to know who are your most underrated wrestlers, what's a dream match of current competitors that you want to see, and who is the most overhated wrestler of your experience as a wrestling fan. We want to know. Hit us up on any platform, Gmail, Instagram, Threads. Sit down, shut up, mark out. Let us know, and we will read them next episode. But for now, please rate and review us on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you can rate and review podcasts. I'm Blade Daily.
Joshi G.
This has been Sit Down, Shut Up, Mark Out, Pro Wrestling Forever.
Bye, guys.
Get the hell out of here, Jack Payne!